thought maybe it was too much. We weren't going to make it, not enough time. But yeah, it's kind of the Brown thing, you know?
For over 3 decades, Billy Brown stood as a symbol of pure, untamed freedom. A dedicated patriarch who walked away from modern society to carve out a legacy in the harsh Alaskan wilderness. To millions of viewers, he was the ultimate pioneer, a man whose unbreakable bond with his family could withstand any trial nature threw their way. Yet, beneath the rugged exterior and the inspiring television narrative lay a deeply buried reality. Far from the cameras and the public eye, Billy was meticulously maintaining a parallel existence, keeping secrets so profound that his own family remained completely in the dark. Today, the carefully crafted illusion is finally tearing at the seams, unveiling a complex web of hidden truths and deep betrayals that no one ever saw coming. The man behind the myth. Billy Brown was a master storyteller. That much no one could deny. From the moment Alaskan Bush People premiered in 2014, audiences were captivated by the Brown family's tale of survival, resilience, and raw determination. Billy painted himself as a modern-day pioneer, a man who had turned his back on civilization to raise his family in the untamed wilderness of Alaska. His deep, weathered voice narrated their struggles with a poetic gravitas that made every episode feel like an epic. He was the patriarch, the guide, the hero who led his family through impossible odds. But heroes, as we often forget, are only human, and humans lie. The first crack in Billy's carefully constructed image appeared not with a massive scandal, but with a simple whisper of doubt. It was subtle at first, a murmur among dedicated fans who began noticing inconsistencies in the show's timeline and narrative. How could a family so isolated from society afford the expensive equipment they used? Why did specific dates and locations not add up when cross-referenced with public records? Where exactly were the Browns living when the cameras stopped rolling? And why did neighbors in various Alaskan towns report seeing the family staying in hotels rather than their wilderness homestead? These questions were initially dismissed as conspiracy theories, the ramblings of skeptics unwilling to believe in the purity of the Brown family dream. But the murmurs grew louder. Investigative bloggers, former acquaintances, and even distant family members started coming forward with stories that did not align with the narrative Billy had sold to the world. Then, in late 2021, just months after Billy's death, a woman named Kathleen stepped into the light. She was not a stranger. She was not a fan. She was someone who claimed to have known Billy Brown intimately for nearly 3 decades. Someone who said she had been part of a life he had hidden from everyone, including his own wife and children. Her testimony was explosive, and it was just the beginning. Billy Brown, the man who preached family values and simplicity, had been living a double life so intricate, so carefully managed, that it had gone undetected for 30 years. The revelations that followed would not only shatter the image of the beloved TV patriarch, but also expose a tangled web of deception, financial fraud, and emotional betrayal that reached far beyond anyone's expectations. The story that emerged was not just about one man's lies. It was about the cost of those lies, the people who paid the price, and the legacy of broken trust that continues to haunt everyone who believed in Billy Brown's wilderness fairy tale. This is the story of the man behind the myth, the secrets he kept, the lies he told, and the lives he destroyed in the process. Shadows in the Wilderness. Kathleen Dupree was not seeking fame. She was not chasing a reality TV spotlight or a book deal. She simply wanted the truth to be known. In a series of interviews conducted in nearly 2022, Kathleen revealed that she had met Billy Brown in the mid-1990s, long before Alaskan Bush People ever existed. At the time, Billy was already married to Amy, and the couple had several children. But according to Kathleen, Billy told her a very different story. He claimed his marriage was essentially over, that he and Amy were living separate lives bound only by their children, and that he was searching for a way out of what he described as an increasingly suffocating situation. Kathleen said she believed him. Why would she not? Billy was charming, persuasive, and seemingly genuine. He spoke of his dreams, his desire to live off the land, his frustrations with the constraints of modern society. He made her feel like she was part of something bigger, something meaningful, something that transcended the ordinary limitations of everyday life. Their relationship, Kathleen claimed, spanned nearly 3 decades. Billy would visit her during breaks in filming, during supposed family trips, And even during times when the Browns were said to be deep in the Alaskan wilderness surviving harsh winters, he maintained 2 phones, 2 separate lives, and an extraordinary ability to compartmentalize his existence, as if it were almost superhuman. But it was not just about romance. Kathleen alleged that Billy used her financially, borrowing money for various ventures that he promised would pay off handsomely. She said he spun elaborate tales of investments, land deals, and business opportunities that never materialized. She claimed she lost tens of thousands of dollars believing in Billy's vision, only to realize years later that much of what he told her was fabricated from whole cloth. The most shocking part of Kathleen's story was not the affair itself, but the depth of the deception. Billy had introduced Kathleen to a small circle of friends as his partner, his companion, the woman he planned to build a future with once he untangled himself from his complicated family situation. He attended social events with her, celebrated holidays together, and even discussed detailed plans for a life together once his children were grown and independent. And yet, during all of this, Billy was simultaneously filming a television show centered entirely on the strength and unity of his family, delivering heartfelt monologues about the sacred bond between husband and wife, parent and child. When Kathleen finally confronted Billy about the contradictions, about the lies that were becoming impossible to ignore, he reportedly became defensive and manipulative. He accused her of not understanding the complexity of his situation, of being impatient, of failing to see the bigger picture he was working toward. He was a master at deflection, at turning blame outward, at making others question their own perceptions and judgments. The psychological manipulation ran deeper than Kathleen initially understood. Billy had a gift for making people feel special, chosen, as if they were the only ones who truly understood him and his vision for life. He would share intimate details about his supposed struggles, his feelings of being trapped by circumstances beyond his control, his dreams for a different life once he could break free. These confessions created a bond, a sense of shared secrecy that made Kathleen feel uniquely connected to him in ways that transcended ordinary relationships. But those same tactics, she would later learn, were likely used on others as well. Billy was not just living a double life. He was living multiple lives, each one carefully calibrated to give him what he needed, whether that was emotional validation, financial support, or simply an escape from the pressures of his public persona and the demands of his growing television empire. Kathleen eventually walked away from the relationship, heartbroken and financially ruined. But she stayed silent for years, out of respect for Billy's children, whom she had never met but felt protective of, out of a sense of shame about being deceived so thoroughly, and perhaps out of a lingering hope that the man she loved had been real, even if the relationship was built on foundations of sand. It was only after Billy's death in February 2021 that Kathleen felt free to speak without fear of his manipulation or retaliation. And once she did, others began to come forward with similar stories, each one adding another layer to the portrait of a man who had perfected the art of living multiple lives simultaneously. One woman, who requested anonymity out of concern for her own privacy and family, came forward with claims that she, too, had been involved with Billy during the early 2000s. Her story mirrored Kathleen's in disturbing ways. The same promises of leaving his complicated family situation, the exact financial requests disguised as investment opportunities, the same elaborate justifications for why his life was so impossibly complicated, and why she needed to be patient. Another former associate recalled Billy's pattern of creating emotional dependencies in people around him. He would identify people who were vulnerable, lonely, or searching for meaning in their lives, and he would offer them precisely what they needed to hear. He was not just a con artist in the traditional sense of financial fraud. He was an emotional architect, carefully building relationships designed to serve his purposes while leaving those involved grateful for the privilege of being part of his world. Billy Brown was not just a reality TV star. He was a master manipulator, a brilliant deceiver, and a man who had weaponized his considerable charisma to devastating effect on multiple victims over multiple decades. The price of illusion. If Billy's secret relationships were shocking, his financial dealings were equally damning, and perhaps even more extensive in their scope and impact. For years, fans of Alaskan Bush People believed the Browns were living off the land, surviving on their wits, their wilderness skills, and their unbreakable family bond. The show depicted them hunting for food, fishing in icy waters, building shelters by hand, and enduring harsh Alaskan winters with nothing but their determination and resourcefulness to sustain them through the long, dark months. But the reality was far different from what millions of viewers believed they were watching. Court documents, financial records, and testimonies from former associates revealed that Billy Brown was not the self-sufficient wilderness man he claimed to be. In fact, he was deeply entrenched in a lifestyle funded by reality TV money, questionable loans, and a pattern of financial deception that stretched back decades before the cameras ever rolled. In 2015, Billy and his son Joshua were charged with multiple counts of theft related to Alaska's Permanent Fund Dividend program. The state alleged that the Browns had falsely claimed residency in Alaska to collect thousands of dollars in benefits, despite spending much of their time in other states, particularly Texas and Washington. Billy and Joshua eventually pleaded guilty to the charges, and both were sentenced to jail time, though Billy's sentence was suspended due to his claims of poor health and medical concerns. This was not an isolated incident in Billy's long and checkered financial history. According to multiple sources who came forward after his death, Billy had a decades-long pattern of bending the truth to secure economic advantages from anyone willing to believe his stories. Former business partners came forward with disturbing stories of failed ventures, unpaid debts that stretched back years, and broken promises that left them financially devastated. One man claimed that Billy had convinced him to invest over $50,000 in a land development project in the early 2000s, painting vivid pictures of a sustainable community that would revolutionize wilderness living. The project collapsed entirely, and the money disappeared without any accounting or explanation, leaving the investor with nothing but memories of Billy's persuasive promises. The pattern was remarkably consistent across multiple victims and multiple decades. Billy would approach people with grand visions, with promises of shared success and mutual benefit that sounded almost too good to be true. He would leverage his considerable charisma and extraordinary storytelling ability to secure investments, loans, and other forms of support. And then, when things inevitably fell apart as they always did, he would blame external circumstances, bad luck, corrupt officials, or the failures of others while accepting no responsibility himself. Billy also portrayed himself as a published author, a man of letters who had penned several books about frontier living and family values that supposedly sold well. While he did write and self-publish a book titled One Wave at a Time, the actual sales were minimal at best, and much of the content was later criticized by readers as recycled anecdotes and vague philosophical musings, rather than the practical survival advice the title and marketing promised. Financial investigators who examined Billy's dealings after his death found a complex web of LLCs, property transactions, and business ventures that seemed designed more to create the appearance of legitimacy and success than to generate actual sustainable wealth. Billy was remarkably skilled at using legal structures to shield himself from accountability, to create layers of complexity that made it difficult for anyone to track where money was actually going or how it was being used. The deeper investigators dug into Billy's financial history, the more it became clear that his entire public persona was built on a foundation of half-truths, strategic omissions, and outright lies told with complete confidence. The rugged, self-reliant frontiersman was, in reality, a man who had spent much of his adult life manipulating systems, exploiting people, and crafting narratives to maintain an image that was as fragile as it was false. One particularly revealing detail emerged from tax records that were eventually made public. Despite portraying the family as struggling to survive on the edge of civilization, barely scraping by, Billy had been earning a substantial six-figure income from the show for years. Yet the family frequently claimed hardship in public statements, sought donations from devoted fans, and presented themselves as barely making it from one season to the next. The dissonance between their actual financial situation and their carefully maintained public narrative was absolutely stark. And yet, somehow, Billy managed to keep the illusion alive for decades. He was a performer of the highest order, always on stage, always in character, always one step ahead of those who might question his story or look too closely at the facts. But every performance eventually ends, and when it does, the audience is left to reckon with what was real and what was simply an elaborate, carefully rehearsed act. Innocent bystanders. Billy's double life did not just affect him and the women he deceived. It shattered the foundation of trust for the people who loved him most, his children. The Brown children, raised in the public eye from a young age, were taught from the beginning that family was everything. Billy drilled into them the importance of loyalty, unity, and standing together against a world that did not understand their chosen lifestyle. He presented himself as the ultimate father figure, a man who had sacrificed everything conventional society offered to give his children a life of freedom and adventure in the wilderness. But as the truth about Billy's secret relationships and extensive financial deceptions began to surface after his death, the children were forced to confront a painful reality. The man they idolized had been lying to them their entire lives about nearly everything that mattered. For some of the Brown children, the revelations were absolutely devastating. They had built their whole identities around the values Billy espoused and the lifestyle he claimed to represent, only to discover that those values were hollow and that lifestyle was largely fabricated for television cameras. Bear Brown, one of the family's more outspoken members and a fan favorite, hinted at internal conflicts in several social media posts following his father's death. While he never directly addressed the rumors about Billy's double life or the allegations from women like Kathleen, his cryptic messages suggested a deep sense of betrayal and confusion. He spoke of learning hard truths about people you love, of grappling with the difference between the man he thought his father was and the man he actually was beneath the carefully constructed image. In one particularly emotional post that resonated with thousands of followers, Bear wrote about the complexity of loving someone who has deeply hurt you, about trying to reconcile happy childhood memories with painful adult revelations. His words captured the impossible position the Brown children found themselves in. Rain Brown, the youngest of the siblings and perhaps the most vulnerable, also struggled publicly with her father's legacy in the months after his passing. In several interviews, she expressed feeling lost, not knowing whom to trust or what to believe anymore. She admitted that the family had always kept certain things private away from cameras, but she never imagined the secrets ran so deep or were so fundamental to who her father really was. Rain's vulnerability in sharing her pain made her deeply relatable to viewers who had watched her grow up on television from a young child to a young woman. She represented the innocence that had been exploited, the child who had been used as a prop in her father's elaborate performance without ever understanding the full extent of the deception. The older Brown children, those who had spent more time with Billy before the show began, and who remembered life before the cameras, reportedly had an even more complicated relationship with the revelations. Some had long suspected that their father was not entirely truthful about various aspects of their life. Still, they had chosen to remain silent out of loyalty, out of fear of his anger, or perhaps out of a practical desire to protect the family's livelihood and the opportunities the show provided. The financial dependence created by the show made it nearly impossible for the children to speak out, even when they had doubts. Alaskan Bush People was not just a TV program documenting their lives. It was the family's primary and essentially only source of income. Questioning Billy's integrity publicly would have risked everything they had built, everything they relied on for survival. Matthew Brown, who had largely stayed out of the spotlight in later years, was rumored to have had significant disagreements with Billy over the direction of the show and the authenticity of their portrayal to viewers. His absence from later seasons was never fully explained to fans. Still, those close to the family suggested it stemmed from his unwillingness to continue participating in what he increasingly saw as an elaborate fabrication. The children were also dealing with the intensely public nature of their father's exposure. Every revelation, every accusation, every piece of damning evidence became fodder for online discussions, gossip websites, and investigative reports. They could not grieve privately or process their complicated feelings away from public scrutiny and judgment. Billy's death in February 2021 did not bring the closure they desperately needed. If anything, it opened the floodgates wider. Without Billy's commanding presence to hold the narrative together through sheer force of personality, the cracks in the foundation became impossible to ignore or patch over. The children were left to pick up the pieces of a legacy built entirely on lies, to navigate a world that now questioned everything they had ever claimed to be. They were victims of their father's deception in the truest sense, but they were also complicit in perpetuating it to millions of viewers, whether they fully realized it or not. And now, they had to decide who they wanted to be in the aftermath of the truth. A wife's silent sacrifice. If anyone bore the heaviest brunt of Billy's double life, it was Amy Brown. She had been with him since she was 15, leaving everything behind to raise his children in isolation and stand by his side through every public scandal. She was the quiet strength holding the family together. But behind her serene smile, Amy was fighting hidden battles. In 2017, she was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. While the show documented her treatment in graphic detail, drawing millions of viewers, the cameras missed her deep emotional turmoil. Friends later revealed that Amy had long suspected Billy's infidelity, noticing inconsistencies in his stories and unexplained absences. Raised in a conservative environment, she chose silence to protect her family and the identity she had built around her marriage. Billy had met Amy when she was just a child, establishing a deeply troubling power dynamic where he defined every aspect of their lives. When Kathleen's story and other allegations finally went public after Billy's death in February 2021, those close to Amy said the depth of the deception completely shattered her. He had repaid her lifetime of devotion with systematic betrayal. Though her cancer remarkably went into remission, the grueling treatments and the loss of Billy left her physically and emotionally weakened. She was forced to navigate a world without the man who had controlled her reality for over 4 decades, a man she now realized she may never have truly known. Amy's story remains a heartbreaking testament to silent strength, showing a woman who sacrificed everything for a dream that turned out to be entirely hollow. The crumbled legacy. Billy Brown died on February 7, 2021, at the age of 68. The official cause of death was reported as a seizure, though Billy had been struggling with various serious health issues for years, leading up to his final day. His passing marked the definitive end of an era for Alaskan Bush People and for reality television. Billy had been the absolute heart of the show, the narrator whose voice guided viewers through each episode, the driving force behind the family's story and their rise to fame. Without him, the series felt incomplete, directionless, adrift. But Billy's death also opened the door for long-buried truths to finally emerge into the light. In the months and years following his passing, the revelations about his extensive double life began to surface one after another. Kathleen came forward with her story. Former business associates spoke out about financial deceptions. Other women shared similar experiences. Investigators and journalists scrutinized financial records. And slowly but steadily, the carefully constructed image of Billy Brown as the heroic wilderness patriarch crumbled into dust. The Brown family found themselves in an absolutely impossible position. They could acknowledge the truth publicly and risk destroying the legacy Billy had spent decades building, or they could remain silent and continue living in the suffocating shadow of his lies. Most of the family chose silence, at least publicly. Alaskan Bush People continued production for a time, with the remaining family members attempting to keep the show going without Billy. But the magic that had captivated millions was gone forever. Viewers sensed the artifice more acutely without Billy's commanding presence and storytelling ability to distract from the inconsistencies. Ratings declined steadily. Criticism from fans and media intensified. The show that had once celebrated the Browns as inspiring symbols of resilience and authenticity was now seen by many as a carefully constructed facade, a powerful testament to the ability of storytelling to triumph over truth when audiences desperately want to believe. Billy's legacy is deeply complicated and contradictory. On one hand, he undeniably created opportunities for his family, gave them a platform that brought fame and financial security, and introduced millions of people to the beauty and harshness of the Alaskan wilderness. On the other hand, he built that entire legacy on systematic deception, emotional manipulation, and betrayal of everyone who trusted him. His children are left to grapple with the fundamental duality of their father for the rest of their lives. They remember the man who taught them to hunt, to build, to survive in harsh conditions. But they also must reckon with the man who lied to them constantly, who used them as props in his performance, who prioritized image and profit over integrity and truth. Amy must live with the painful knowledge that the man she devoted her entire life to was simultaneously living a parallel existence she knew nothing about, betraying her trust year after year. And Kathleen, along with the other women drawn into Billy's web of deception, must face the brutal reality that they were pawns in a game they did not even know they were playing. Billy Brown's story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition, the terrible cost of maintaining a false image, and the devastating ripple effects of one man's lies across multiple lives and generations. The truth, as painful as it is to confront, deserves to be known and understood. Only by facing it directly can the people he left behind begin to heal, rebuild their lives, and forge a legacy that is genuinely their own rather than another performance. Billy Brown lived a double life for 30 years, and no one knew until it was far too late. But now, the world does know, and nothing will ever be the same for anyone involved. Billy Brown's life was the ultimate performance, a beautifully crafted illusion that captivated millions while concealing a devastating trail of deception. He gave his family fame, yet bound them to a reality built entirely on fabrication. Now, with the cameras dark and the secrets exposed, those he left behind are left to sort through the wreckage of a 30-year lie. The wilderness fairy tale has finally ended, leaving the world to remember not the hero he portrayed, but the master storyteller who lost himself in his own myth.